What really gets me up out of bed in the morning is creating something from nothing with a group of brilliant people. If you're going to be there, be the best that exists in that field.
How do you lead when it counts?
My first experience with this was
Seen Larkin launched startups, guided global giants. As CEO of OnLogic, he leads a company that powers everything from smart agriculture to advanced robotics. What's it like leading the quiet giant of tech?
and the culture here is just phenomenal. When you are in a hyper-growth company, you have to keep things extremely simple. The problem with brilliant people is they can do anything. So it's really keeping that focus.
How do you master hypergrowth?
To master hyper-growth, you need to consistently be.
You're so good at it.
That is success. I created a structure for my executives and can just take you real quick through it. It's like 6 steps.
We love steps.
Okay, so
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Lead the Team. Born into business, built for growth. Seen Larkin was raised in a family where entrepreneurship was the norm, and he launched startups, guided global giants at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and stepped in as interim C-suite leadership when the stakes were at their highest. And now, as CEO of OnLogic, he leads a company that quietly powers everything from smart agriculture to advanced robotics, designing industrial computers tough enough for factory floors and smart enough for the edge of innovation. Seen, welcome to Lead the Team, sir.
hey, thanks for having me. This is great.
Woo. So how do you lead when it counts?
That's why I thought I was coming here. I thought you were going to tell me.
You're leading right now.
Right? I was like, oh, that's why I'm here. Leading when it counts. My first experience with this was I was very young in my career, and there was one of our clients. At the time, I was an auditor and consultant in a large CPA firm. One of their CFOs of a large company was having cancer treatment, and so they needed to step out to take care of family and themselves for a period of time, a few weeks to a couple of months. Nobody really knew. And so they contacted the firm. They say, hey, who would you put there? And they sent me out to be with that team for that period of time. And it counted because people, at the time they loved their CFO. It wasn't like the person, it was gone and they were very concerned, but at the same time, the company needed to evolve and continue to grow. And so how do you adopt an entire team with an existing leader, and go into that executive team to be one of them and then grow at the same time.
Wow.
That was an interesting experience, and it ended really well.
Well, how did it end?
It ended with the team. We meshed really, really well. The cancer treatments and stuff like that, they needed to be prolonged for a very long period of time. And so they knew that they needed to find another CFO. I was asked to stay and be that new executive. I turned it down because I was really loving what I was doing, but the fact that they had asked me to stay was a really good, that endeared me to them, and it was fun. We got a lot of really, really good work done.
That's the ultimate affirmation is getting the full-time offer. So
wait, you want me? What?
Wait, really? You like me? You really were like,
I know.
So I like what you said. Like you adopted this team overnight. And I guess it sounds like they adopted you. What did you do? Because so the stakes were high.
Yeah,
there are a million ways this thing could have gone wrong. What did you do to show up?
Because you don't know politics, you don't know who's doing what in things, and so the easiest way to, in my opinion, to move into those types of situations is to, of course, traditionally just listen a lot. But at the exact same time, I think people are like, listen, don't change anything. Like when you're in a position like, no, we must change stuff because the company is evolving.
Yes.
It is listen like crazy, but every single moment that you can take the opportunity to be the outside voice of like, you haven't been there and be like, why do we do it this way? Like, why? Like, explain to me. And mostly when somebody can't on the back of a napkin within 2 sentences say why they do something, it may be too complicated for the next iteration of growth. And
Wow.
so
And what do you mean
you,
by that? Too complicated for the next iteration of growth?
um, when you are in a hyper growth company, you have to keep things extremely simple. And what
Hmm.
makes it even more doubly complicated is when you are dealing and working with brilliant people. The problem with brilliant people is they can do anything, you
Hmm.
know? And so it's really keeping that focus because each one of them can say, hey, we can do it this much better and this much better and this much better. And there's always a limited amount of, time and resources.
Hmm.
And so keeping brilliant people focused is on like the simplest way to get from point A to B. And then you can build out along the way. But usually if somebody comes in and says, well, let me tell you about all of these different things that we're doing in all these complicated ways, that's a really good point in the back of my mind where I'm just logging, challenging every single assumption that is being made because like,
Wow.
why do we do it this way? Tell me why that's important. What's the return on that? And then we usually can simplify 80% of it.
Wow. So you had the gift of fresh eyes in that situation, which everyone else had been there for a while, and you were able to ask these foundational questions and probably not piss them off. Versus,
Yeah, because you're not saying, well, that sucks. And like, why would you do it that way? Or my goodness, I can't believe you guys don't do it the way I did it at a different company because that
PwC, this
never is
and
going to
that.
work. Like you
Yeah.
talk down to people because especially with where I grew in my position to where most of the executives that work on my team, they dwarf me in experience. Like they've been doing what they've been doing for 40 years. I work with like a PhD German engineer. There's no point in the world I'm going to teach him something about engineering. That's not my role. But to, keep brilliant people focused and simplify our path to success in that vision.
Such a good story and great outcome for that. And I don't know a lot of leaders that would thrive in that situation because you're like it's almost like it might have, I don't know, like, did it feel like your temp labor initially? Like, hey, they could just
Oh,
get
very
rid of
much
me
so. And that's
tomorrow.
exactly the way that it was positioned. Like, okay, this guy may be here for a week. He may be here for 6 weeks. Like, who the heck knows? And I was living out of away from my family in a hotel for weeks in California. And it was, you just don't know. So, especially adopting a team and then working in an executive team, and there's a common goal, but there's still, I mean, there is another person that's also occupying that seat that may show up the next day. And being able to push as hard as you possibly can with all of those factors, it does
Huh.
become a delicate balance.
What about you made you want to do that? Because you end up going back because you're like, actually, I kind of like what I was doing. I'm going to go back to that. And you ended up
Yeah.
not sticking around.
Yeah.
But why did you make that jump in the first place? Because it seems pretty risky.
To go back to the CPA world.
Well, I'm thinking why you made the jump initially to go into a temp executive position that
Oh,
you didn't know how long it would last. You're away from your
it,
family. It seems like a bad idea.
because at that time in my career, I was told to. It was more
Okay,
of like, it was more
you're the
of,
right guy.
your CPA firm has all these consultants and CPAs. And, one of their big clients says, hey, we have this need. Who would you recommend? And they're like, we should use Scene on this.
Okay.
And so it was more of like, hey, of course they asked, like, would you be interested? And I was always looking for, getting new experiences in my career. I'm like, wow, that'll be an experience. Let's try
Okay.
that. Let's see if I can
Okay.
mess that up.
Yeah, very good. All right. So you mentioned the term hypergrowth. How do you master hypergrowth?
Ooh. Besides trying to keep things really, really simple, it does come down to the people.
Hmm.
And everybody says that. I didn't really start scaling in my career until I took control of my professional development, and I messed it up so many different ways. But to master hypergrowth, you have these brilliant people. What really gets me up out of the bed in the morning is, creating something from nothing with a group of brilliant people, right?
Hmm.
That is just awesome. Like it didn't exist yesterday. It existed now because of the sheer will of these really cool individuals, right?
Hmm.
And part of that is professional development.
Hmm.
And it's always professional development's a very hard topic because it's so amorphous. It's so people say, well, make sure that you're communicating well, make sure you're giving people proper direction, but it's so high level, you can't really do anything. And so until I really created a structure for my executives and for anybody that I interacted with and myself, once that was done, the companies that I was with in my own career started scaling very, very quickly. So I think that there's one section to your question is how you grow extremely brilliant people. And the second is if you want a good structure on just like innovative cultures and like how to like really hyperscale them, there's the most amazing article by the Harvard Business Review called like The Hard Truths of Innovative Cultures. I love it. It's a couple of years old. It's by Gary, I believe, Pisano. And oh my goodness, if you want just like a really true, like, hey, what are those hard truths of innovative cultures on how you do innovation really well? I can't recommend it more. It's a great article. But
it seems contrary to me, hypergrowth and development, because if you're truly in a hypergrowth environment, how do you have time to step out of your day job and read a bunch of stuff, go to a course, even have meetings when you're in a, like the business is moving on all cylinders, taking off like a rocket ship? So how are you thinking about that? You taking people out of their hyper growth job to develop them? How are you doing it?
Well, I mean, we do. I mean, most people, like I did it after hours because like you have your full-time job. And a lot of times people have like, hey, here's your course during work hours. If I'm being realistic, what I did with my own career and, you know, the executives in the C-suite, they have their very impactful roles all day, every day. It really is in other times. When I was leading teams that were not at the C-suite, you know, it was more of we tried to integrate a lot of the professional development into their day jobs of where we wanted them to go.
Okay.
And we also do that in the C-suite as well. But
An
it's a
example
combination.
of, you don't have to name names, even if it's you. Like, I'm
It's
thinking,
okay. I got so many stories that it's like, tell me how long you want this.
and just sort of lining this up for my, you know, how I'm thinking about this, and leaders might be thinking about it. They're like, you know, I don't have time. Like I'm in the C-suite of a hypergrowth company, or I want to be a hypergrowth company. How, you know, after work, I'm tired. I don't have time to think about
I have
this
a
during day.
family. I have kids. I've got, you know, the soccer practice.
So like, what's something you developed in yourself or your team, like a
Yeah.
trait
So
or
I created a structure that I failed at for so many years that it serves me and whoever wants to opt in on it well. And I can just take you real quick through it. It's like 6 steps. And it used to be like huge. It used to be this big thing, but
we love steps and stuff like
simplified. But for your viewers or people that would listen to this, what I would say from kind of disclaimers with this, what I've learned is if you create a program for professional development, say this is how I'm going to develop my executives or my managers and my individual contributors, the moment that you start separating those out, I would say that, because I've done that before, you do a disservice and you actually do not professionally develop people correctly. Because if you have an individual contributor that may want to be a manager and you're only developing managers in a certain way, you've robbed them of those experiences. And same with executives and things like that. So you have to create a platform that kind of works for everybody. And the way that I did it, and everybody can do it a different way. The last disclaimer is they have to want it. And so whenever I meet with an executive, a lot of times, I'll be like, hey, they'll meet with me and they could be like 20 years older than me. And I'll be like, hey, would you like to be professionally developed and I can help you? And a lot of times some people are like, no, I got it. It's okay. And other times I'll be like, well, here's a structure that works for me. Because I used to be like, hey, everybody thinks like me. Everybody wants to just grow and all that stuff. It's not the case. And I used to think, well, what's wrong with these people or whatever? And I found out that I personally was thinking about it wrong, because if somebody loves exactly what they're doing, and we are not an up or out culture, like, you know, you get promoted or you're gone. It's like, if you are exceptional and you love what you're doing, that is success. But if you're going to be there, be the best that exists in that field. Have people call you on like be the absolute best in that, because if not, in a hypergrowth culture, we will continue to grow, and then we'll either have to hire your boss if you aren't growing. Right?
Yeah.
You know, so that's but from
Hmm.
But from the overall structure of how I grow
Yeah.
executives, if they opt in,
Break it down.
you
And the
ready? You ready
disclaimer
for
was
it?
important.
Huh?
And the disclaimer is important. You're like, hey, before you do the six, and we talk about this, do you want this? And I
Yeah.
love
And
that. Not like you have to have this or you're out of here. It's, hey, this is your opt-in professional
yeah.
development program. All right.
Yeah. And okay. And so if they say yes, what do you got? And the goal of these steps is to create a one-page professional development that maps out everything to develop you to your end goal for 10 years on one page.
Okay.
And so just to
Yeah.
simplify it very quickly. And so
Hmm.
the first thing where I have lost years and done terrible, wasted a lot of my time and people's time is the very first step is like wait until there's a relationship of trust that they will tell you their goal. And the goal is so in our business, we have accountability docs. So we have one-on-ones every 2 weeks, but once a month you sit with your manager and it lists out all of everything that you're accountable for and your success factors. And you review it like how you doing. And at the very bottom is your professional development. And a lot of times people
Mhm.
hand me their professional development like, hey, Seam, can you review this? And on the bottom it says, be impactful. And I hand it back to them and I'm like, this is not good enough because I have no idea how to help you. And so what I love is when they're like, I want your job. I want to grow into this thing. Even if it's 10 to 15 years out, I want to be the CEO. I want to, be where my manager is, but like be bold. Like actually tell me what you want.
Don't
And
make your boss try to read your mind and
no,
figure what's right for you. And by the way, that
nobody,
was me for
yeah,
like the first half of my career. My boss should know what I want.
I
But
know. They're like, they've been here. They know. I'm
yeah,
like,
even though I don't know.
nobody knows your dreams and desires better than you. And nobody's going to care about your professional development more than you because you know exactly where your life wants to go
Yeah.
as much as anybody. Because if the person's confused kind of where they want to go, there's no way that their boss is going to know. Right. And you'll just get what the company needs. So you define a goal
Good.
and it can change. The next is make sure, and this is where I wasted a couple of years with different people, is make sure your common language about that goal is the same. Case in
Hmm.
point, where I messed this up is I had an executive, tons of experience, one of the most impactful people I have ever worked with. And he was like, I want to be the COO. And in my experiences, and I looked at him and I'm like, well, you don't have the experience to be the COO. And in his, many, many decades of experience, he was like, well, the COO had, like fulfillment in manufacturing and, technical support, but that was it. And in my experiences with all my other companies, it was no,
Hmm.
the management team and the CEO creates vision, and then the CEO, effectuates that vision across all departments. So you have to be able to stand in and work with marketing, sales, IT, finance. And so
Yes.
he's like, hey, I want to be the COO. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, I need to like move you around the company like crazy. And to him, he's like, I'm already doing it. Just why don't you recognize me in the role or the title or something like that? And
Hmm.
because every company is different, no matter where you go and how they define a role, make sure you have identified what that role means. Because it took me, I'm embarrassed to say, like a year and a half of talking past really smart people, like, well, you know what this means, right? Wait, what do you mean?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh my gosh. So there's actually a step of make sure the goal that you want, you both agree on what that actually is. Because you can waste somebody like a year and a half of somebody's life, and that's not fair to them or the company.
Love that. The common language counts for sure. And every vertical in a company function has their own language. So it's,
Yeah.
yeah, gotta
So
find.
once you have that common thing, that whatever is important to that person, what I do is I do two ratings. And the first one is the next step is go out and find articles that are meaningful for that role. And
Hmm.
it is so insanely hard because, especially now with AI, because it'll give very general, like, hey, it usually reads off, like if we say the CFO, it reads off responsibilities like a job description. E&Y, which is a great firm. Years ago, they had a series called The DNA of the CMO, the CEO, the CFO, whatever. It was a beautiful series of articles that you can look up online. And what made it magical, and I've used them for the basis of many of these conversations, is because it's hard to find great content that is technical online, is they would say, okay, we've interviewed 3,000 CFOs. In general, This is like the core skills that you need, the core relationships, the core experiences you have to occupy this role, but in priority order to run an entire company. And so when you find something like that, it's very much like, oh, have you executed mergers and acquisitions? Have you helped with ripping out and putting in an ERP system? So it's very much experience based, and you either have it or don't have it. And so you find a common article that you both agree delineates roles and responsibilities. And then what you do is you don't do it together. They rate themselves 1 to 5, like I have mastered it. It's like flipping pancakes. And one's like you're fresh out of college. They rate themselves, and then off in the corner, I rate them on these 100 different qualifications. And you do it blindly because you want to see where the discrepancies are. Like, oh, I don't see you that way. And then before we look at those numbers, I have the same thing, but it's just 15 items. One's core to general business, and then 5 things for leadership, which is like marketing, sales, IT, finance, legal. And I just 1 to 5, how do I see them as knowledge-based? And then the last 5 is leadership, like communication, presence. And you rate each other apart, and then you come back, and all of a sudden there is bright, shining differences. And I'm like, those are the hard conversations that you have to have. Because I was like, I see I could definitely have this role. I'm like, oh, if you don't have these skills, and I don't believe you do, let's have that conversation.
Oof, and it grounds the role and what's happening now, because the job descriptions get stale so quickly, especially in tech. And you're getting them involved in what's happening now. What are the skills now? You had these skills, you would have been great for this last year, but now your role requires this other stuff. Look at this Harvard Business Review article, and you ain't got it yet. And the good news is we know, and you can go work on this.
Yeah, and
that's cool.
Well, what I get pleasantly surprised is sometimes I'll rate somebody who's like in operations, like 0 in marketing or something. And they'll be like, no. Did you know I didn't put it on my resume because it wasn't relevant, but I used to own my own marketing firm.
Okay.
I'm like a 5 in marketing. I'm like, oh, wow. I didn't know. Tell me, show me your portfolio. Show me your website that you used to have. And you also bridge the gap on a lot of misunderstandings. And you learn that you just don't have the information, like in that marketing example, that you would have never figured out. But like, okay, if you really want this great role, these are the things that you need. So once you get that done, you have like a list of 30 things, because it may be like, hey, if I want to be a CEO and it's over, like, hey, on average, it's going to take you 10, 15 years, 7 years, wherever the person's at. But let's say you have 15 things on your accountability doc. I'm like, you only get to choose 2 this whole year. And what are the most important? Because everything has a priority. Anybody who says differently they're not running a business. Everything has a priority. There's a give and take to everything. And so when we figure out what that priority is, we kind of set it to the side and we say, okay, we think these are the top 2 or 3. And then the very last step is we create the 1-pager. And the 1-pager, basically, the way that I created it, organized it, is like, it's chopped in thirds. And the first third is, we cannot, regardless of what you want, regardless of any of your wants or desires, what do we believe is the future of the company for the next 10 years? Every year, like, oh, I think we're going to be this level. We're going to need these skill sets. The company's going to get in this evolution, because if you can't keep up with the company, you can't have the role. That's like permission to play. That's the day job, right? So what do we think is going to be the evolution of the company? And let's agree on that. In your middle column, it is, all right, knowing that the company's needs will be this, how do those stack up against all of the deficiencies or the different things that we really want to grow you on? Because there's going to be things you really like and things that you don't like, but to permission to play and keep that role. And then we basically say, okay, this one right here, it's not on my list, but if the company is going to grow this, I need to have that skill. And then over here, here's one for me to kind of bridge that gap of where I want to go. So those are the only 2 things. I don't agree with people having 15. Those are 2 max that you have at the bottom of your accountability doc. And that's the only thing you work on for a year, because if you truly are going to, move the needle on anything inherently to where it really is your skill set, I have a problem when people say, hey, I need a promotion or I need the next level, when they've had success in doing something once. They have success and they'll be like, oh, I can do that. And I'm like, no, when I say you own it, it's like flipping pancakes. Like the company looks to you on how to understand this.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
when you're ready.
Yeah.
A
I love
lot of
that.
times, people are like, well, I've done it a couple of times. And you're like, yes. And that's how I used to think too. I'm like,
Yeah.
guys, look, I did it. Promote me. And they're like,
The
but
last
you need
stage
to
of mastery
own
is
it.
you can teach somebody else how to do it. You're so good at it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's also gets into leadership. When people say, well, if you promote me to be a manager, I'll show you that I'm a leader. And you're
Oh,
like,
yeah.
no,
Yeah.
like leaders are leading regardless if they're a manager or not.
Things about your process I really like. One is it engages them in it, and they are participating and they're thinking about it. It's not just rolling downhill of what you have to do and how you need to be.
Right.
And it keeps their job description and their roles evolving at the speed of change of the company or ahead, and gets them actively involved in figuring that out, because you may not know what someone needs as the
Yeah.
CIO. They need to go find out based on how things are changing. HR is not going to know that based on some
No,
job
and
description.
yeah, and if you're working with really good data and filling what those experiences, core skills are, not just responsibilities like a job description, but core
Yes.
skills you must have, you build that out. And then the third it just kind of existed or came into being over time. And it was almost a reference guide to me, which was the last third is my tenants. Like everybody says, what's your brand? How do you lead? And stuff, and all the marketing words. But to me, it's like, how do I move whether it's an individual contributor or a manager, and so the sections I have on it is, my personal tenet, which is mine personally, is be kind. And it's really weird to hear sometimes management say that, but being kind is absolutely firing somebody that may be hurting other people in a department.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And so it's not a soft thing, but like, hey, if you have to take an action, what is the kindest way you can take that action? Right.
Yes.
And so then with my business decisions, I used to like read all the books and write down. It used to be this long list. This is how all these different wonderful, great people made decisions. And I basically shrunk it down into 4 things, how I make most of all of my business decisions. And I leave it there as a reference, which is just like, if you're going to make a really big decision, if you don't have, capacity, capital, or talent, one of those 3 that are missing, the success of your project or thing you plan on doing, the risk goes up by over 60%. Like if I have all the people, I have all the capacity, but I don't have the capital, right? If I have all the capital in the world but I don't have the talent, right? And I'm just going to like throw money at this, it's going to be extremely inefficient. You're going to lose a lot of money and it's going to take too long. So it's like those risks go up. So when I look at bigger decisions, I look at those 3 things. Do they exist in what realm? And then my kind of second or fourth one, depending on how you count it, is if I forgot who said this, but it stuck with me forever, which is, if you're not meaningfully unique, you better be cheap.
I've heard that.
It's like if you are not me. So as you're listening, I'm like, okay, how are we growing this business? How are we organizing products or services to the market? If you're not meaningfully unique, you better be cheap. And so it's always like, how do we make this unique, right? Because we built, like at
It's
this
more
company,
fun.
we build quality, right?
Cheap is not fun. More unique, more fun.
No, and your sales team and marketing team, they don't like selling cheap stuff that doesn't do anything. It's like they want something that they're proud of and they can be out on the market. But we are the best at this. So it's also inherent in your culture. Like, no, we are the best at this. Choose to be the best.
Yeah. You don't want to be the everyday low prices
No.
technology.
Yeah.
That's not to name any names out there.
But the thing is that if you organize your whole business around it, and some businesses have been wildly successful, which is like, Walmart, the low cost leader, right? Drive those prices down, and they are phenomenal, world class at, doing that. But if that's your whole business model, our business model and all the businesses I have been in is you have to be the best. We don't want to be the cheapest. We are the best, right? And so what is meaningful for your customers? And can you actually describe that uniqueness? And if you can't, go keep at the drawing board, because it has to be, the customer has to be at the center, right?
When your company, or in your past, and even today, when you hit a growth plateau, how do you achieve a growth breakthrough?
It you're gonna think that a broken record, it does come back to people. So there's, and again, having messed this up many times, what I've noticed, and I'm going to make some very general comments that might not go well, but what I've noticed is that the people that get you from 0 to 10 million are in your most incredible people, unless they are really, really pulling on professional development and engaging themselves to pull the whole company to 10 to 20 million. Those glass ceilings at 10 million, 20, 25 million, 50, 100. The most amazing people in the world that got you to those plateaus may not be the people, unless they're really digging into professional development, the same people to get you to 50, the same people to get you to 100. And when I have noticed that the company either stalls or starts to, some kind of inertia that's just stalling something, and I look into the different departments, we've overridden the skill set of one of those teams. And it's like, and you sit with them, and at first it's not like, oh, I guess you're out or whatever. It's like, okay, do you know what the next steps are, right? And if you don't, these are your best people. It's like, hey, what training, what consultants, what can we do? Because you really believe in them and they're within your culture. But sometimes it's like the company is moving so fast, the hard decisions come is like, well, I know this person could possibly get there. They may not be able to get there in the time the business needs, to where the business needs to get there in 12 months. They're going to get there in 3 years. So it's like, hey, please, please, please don't leave, but I do need to hire your boss, and they will be an amazing mentor to show you how to do this. And many times, because the person has had the top role or whatever, they're like, no, I'll they may choose to leave. But those hard conversations early in my career, the hardest conversations were maybe letting somebody go because of, for a cause they, didn't do something right, or they didn't have they acted out. The hardest conversations for me these are your world-class individuals that have ridden with you for a long period of time, but you get to a point I'm like, I can't have the whole company seize. And those are when I've talked with other CEOs and founders, the reason that they'll get to like 25 million and then they'll grow 3% to 100 million over 40 years is like, well, I just couldn't get rid of, Susan, because she was the best person in the entire world.
I've been there. Yeah.
And it's like, and they didn't do anything wrong. The company just outgrew them. Yeah. And it's just, those are so hard. And so the way I approach it is like, hey, let us hire your boss. I don't want you to leave. And if you can learn with a great mentor, maybe you are that next step later when they move on or something. But you're
kind of leading in the world that I hear. You're accepting that the world is dynamic and the world is changing faster all the time. And it's not possible to keep leading a dynamic company in a dynamic environment unless you are supercharged to develop yourself. And you're also accepting the idea that not everybody wants to. Yeah. And if you accept those as like principles, then you can plan.
You can plan for change.
Yeah, you can plan for it.
Because change will happen.
But if you fight those ideas, you're like, I can't do that, or I just know I know they can grow. I know they can't. Yeah, they can, but they don't really want to.
Yeah. And when you're doing, if a lot of your listeners are, if we define like large company as $1 billion in revenue higher, and like a medium-sized company from 100 million to $1 billion, and then smaller from up to 100 million, if the listeners are within like, the 0 to 100 million, and they're really trying to scale very quickly, those are those conversations, because there's a lot more of those, kind of glass ceilings that you hit that companies they fundamentally have to shift so much. Like you can't run the quality department at a $10 million company the same way you run it at a $30 million company, three times the size, three times the influx.
Yeah.
And so you have to find people who are really good with digging in and change. And I was fortunate enough to, work at very large organizations and then medium-sized companies, and then actually come all the way, run the whole gamut. So it's kind of like I know what it should look out like in different areas or different sections, but some of our biggest failures in hiring were, these people that are just brilliant, so brilliant, but they come from very large organizations, and they come and they try and build out, a large organization and a small organization. Like we don't have the money or the people to do all of these different things. Sure, that's best in class, but when you're an entrepreneur in like a $10 million company, like I started at a $10 million company once, and having worked at like a $32 billion company, I'm like, if I put in even the internal controls at a $10 million company, it would seize it.
Yeah, it's a
so
different
it's like
animal.
really,
Yeah,
it's like you have to realize very delicately how uncomfortable you need to consistently be with the amount of change the business can. And so scaling it, people put it all the time in job descriptions. That is a very specific skill set on how to scale a business on the right thing at the right time with the business.
Seeing we don't have much time left, and I got a lot
Oh,
more.
sorry.
I've got a lot more questions. So let me start to sort of land the plane here. What's it like leading the quiet giant of tech?
Oh, Ben, we're not quiet. We're definitely not going to be quiet.
Well, you guys are the backbone, have
we,
been backbone, and the backbone they don't always get
yeah.
front and center
So
attention. So how are we thinking
OnLogic,
about
yeah,
this?
OnLogic is a phenomenal company, and I'm not saying that because I get I get the opportunity to lead it, but I get to lead it with an incredible amount of just quality individuals.
Hmm.
And the culture here is just phenomenal. And it takes a lot of energy to keep that culture. But what OnLogic does, and some of our products are behind me, but we build small form factor computers that are small computers that go into industrial settings. So where a normal computer would not make it. Think of like,
Yeah.
solar fields, industrial automation. So if there's computers or robots making cars and a video and stuff, our computers would be running those robots, in very harsh environments. And while the world has, really gotten excited about AI and, moving a lot of that compute to the edge, we've been doing that for 20 years.
Hmm.
And so it's fueling the fire of our hypergrowth because the world is going through a massive change, which is awesome, which is, everybody needed a lot of the compute that, to be in the cloud. And
Yeah.
what's happening is we really need more of that compute because of latency to be done right at the edge, right where the
Local, right
activity is
there.
happening,
Yeah.
very right there, right where the robot
It's
is,
a big problem.
right? And so our computers are designed to be right there at the edge where that activity is happening, whether that's in building automation, smart ag, smart cities, we're in like every single vertical, but the world needs that, cannot deal with that latency and needs that compute right there. And that's where, in those harsh environments, that's where we excel. And so the people I get to interact with on a day-to-day basis, which are brilliant, is they are making that possible at the edge. And earlier in our interview, it's like what I enjoy is working with brilliant people that create something from nothing that didn't exist yesterday.
Yeah.
You're making the world a better place and enabling the world. And so my job's pretty fantastic because and all of them dwarf me. Like I said, I'm not going to teach them anything about their specific skill set in marketing or finance or ops or engineering, but simplifying all of our activities and vision, and then holding that focus to what is valuable to our customers. That's in a great dynamic culture. That's intoxicating. That's pretty cool.
Well, don't sleep on logic, y'all. You say the future is the cloud, but the future is local, right? Computing and processing because we can't wait around. They got to get stuff done in these
Oh,
adult
it's
settings.
great.
You guys are right there.
We're making moves. Yep.
Yeah.
Check us out.
Scene, thanks for coming on and lead the team. It's been a fun one today.
Thank you, Ben. Thanks for having me.